It's lights out and away we go.
And we're your hosts. I'm Dianne Bortoletto.
And I'm Monique Ceccato.
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to the very first introduction episode of And Away We Go F1 podcast, a podcast that goes beyond the track limits to talk about travel, food and lifestyle surrounding the sport. I'm Dianne Bortoletto, a long-time pre-Drive to Survive Formula One fan, and I'm currently in Margaret River in Western Australia.
And I'm Monique Ceccato, your post-Drive to Survive fan who lives in Stavanger in Norway. Now, each week we're going to be dropping a new episode and we're going to be debriefing what's happened in the race that week. We're going to talk about any new rumours or news that we've heard. And most importantly, we're going to talk about everything else that surrounds the sport. So we're going to talk about the destination, what you can do there if we've been there, and food that you can cook to celebrate the destination that we're in, and anything else that we see fit.
And on non-race weekends, we'll have guests in or talk about other F1 related things.
Di and I have actually known each other for a long time through our day jobs. So we're both travel writers, and Di also owns a PR agency in Western Australia. We worked out that we were both Formula One fans. We didn't know that when we met, but we managed to work that out somewhere along the way. And we started talking more about our interest in Formula One, and it kind of evolved into us talking a little bit more regularly after each race. We'd be messaging each other, asking each other what we thought of the race. And I think the big turning point for us in our Formula One relationship was when Di was working on an event, a motor racing event. Is it Targa West? Is that how I say it?
Yeah, Tarmac West, yeah.
Tarmac West. There we go. She was working on Tarmac West in Western Australia, and we lived just around the corner. So she invited us down and we went to watch. And I must say, the sound of those cars,
that high octane fuel gets you every time, Mon. It's addictive.
Oh, I just remember both of us standing there and being like, oh my God, yes, that sounds so good. And I think that kind of really kickstarted the messaging back and forth after the Formula One races. And we've kind of been doing that ever since. And yeah, it evolved into voice messages.
Frequent voice messages and longer voice messages. And eventually I said, Monique, should we just do a podcast? And here we are.
Now, you're a long-time Formula One fan. How did you get into Formula One?
Well, it all started in the late 90s. I know, hard to believe I'm that old, but yes, my first PR job was in London working on the Orange Arrows Formula One account. I was a junior in the team, and part of my job was media monitoring. So back in those days, there was no electronic media monitoring. I mean, email had only just been invented. So I had to read all the F1 news, all the newspapers that covered F1 to find mentions of the Orange Arrows Formula One team. Yeah, and this is back when Jos Verstappen, yes, Max's dad, was driving. So, within 2 weeks of starting that job, I knew all the drivers, all the teams, all the stats, all the rules. I was instantly hooked and just loved it. I loved that job so much. I'd actually be a bit sad on a Friday afternoon and so excited on Monday mornings. It was just brilliant.
Ultimate job though, right? To be excited about. But, you being kind of hook, line and sinker after just being totally immersed in all those stats and figures and stuff, like that's what Drive to Survive did for me.
Drive to Survive is the greatest show ever made, in my opinion, because it means that I can talk about Formula One with a really wide range of people, and I've got heaps more F1 fans like you, which in the past, I would talk, I'd say to people, oh, do you follow Formula One? And they'd go, sometimes, not really. And I'll be like, no, that's wrong answer. Yep. We are not friends. Move on.
Abort conversation. What else can I talk about? Oh, and now, honestly, it's the best thing ever. It brought me into Formula One, and it opens up conversation with so many more people. The number of people that I've been in Monaco and just randomly started chatting to people, and you talk about the Formula One and you've got something in common. Like, it has brought so many people in to this to this sport. In fact, my partner started watching Drive to Survive, and then he started watching the actual Formula One races, and I'd be pottering around the house and, kind of watching what was happening on the TV and kind of not. But then I got a little bit more interested and I'd start asking questions and he'd start explaining some of the rules to me. And I was like, oh, hang on. Oh, okay, this is interesting. And I think the closest I've ever been to him proposing to me was when I said, I think I want to watch Drive to Survive with you. And that's the closest we've ever come to him proposing to me.
Oh, my God. How he didn't drop to one knee there and then is anyone's guess. We're still waiting, by the way, Ispen, if you're listening. Fabulous. Yeah, Drive to Survive is, it really has opened up the world of Formula One, which, when I first was introduced to the sport back in the late 90s, it was very exclusive, very much behind closed doors. And because I've been a Formula One fan for so long, when people started watching Drive to Survive, and especially during COVID when we were all locked in our homes, not much happening, and people started watching Drive to Survive, I had people that I would see who'd say, oh, I've got to talk to you about Formula One. I've started watching Drive to Survive. And I was just, yes. So, Mon, who's your team?
Big question, Di. No, it's an easy one. I am a Ferrari girl through and through, but I mean, I'm talking to long time tifosi. So, I can't really talk, but I'm a Ferrari girl and I have my drivers too. So I support Oscar Piastri, our fellow Australian, and I also love underdogs like Albon, who are doing so well for teams that traditionally haven't done so well. So, yes. But Ferrari through and through, and take my hat off to you because you're the original Ferrari fan, in my opinion.
The original Ferrari fan in our little orbit. With my surname and your surname, our default position is Ferrari and my blood is Ferrari red, and I'm good with that. But I also do support the Australians on the grid. I also have a soft spot for the older drivers like Alonso and Hamilton. Oh, yeah. And it's the same in surfing as well. I love that Kelly Slater was still competing and won an event a couple of days before his 50th birthday. But digress. I'll try to be as fair as possible with my comments, but I'm always going to back Ferrari. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah, agreed.
But next year is so exciting because we've got so many new drivers starting up on the grid in 2025, including a cousin of mine in Gabrielle Bortoletto.
Okay, guys, for reference, Di thinks everyone is her cousin.
Well,
she's a typical Italian.
Yeah, well, Gabrielle's surname is spelt with one T and mine is a double T. So I'm just putting that down to the Brazilian immigration department that made a spelling mistake when his family immigrated. I'm claiming him as a cousin and...
By default is also my cousin because Di and I come from the same region. Therefore, we're pretty much cousins. So Bortoletto is by default my cousin too, right?
So Monique and I, both of our surnames come from Treviso, which is just near Venice in Veneto in Italy. We both have Italian passports, but we will both be as fair as possible with our comments when we're talking about races and drivers in this podcast. So
with a slight bias, just a slight bias towards Ferrari.
Of course. Well, I wouldn't be Italian if I didn't have a slight bias, would I? But it'll be very exciting to have some fresh blood on the grid next year.
Oh, very much so. I feel like it's a big year, a big change because it wasn't that big of a change like 2023 season going into 2024. 2024 into 2025, there have been so many changes. We've already lost in the 2024 season, we lost 2 drivers mid-season. That's huge.
Well, speaking of races, though, what races have you been to, Monique, and what's your dream race that you'd like to go to?
My first race, actually, we were both at this one. It was Melbourne 2023. That was my first race, which was amazing, fabulous, very, very exciting. But my dream race, for a very weird reason, I really want to go to the Mexico Grand Prix because I really, really, really want to hear the mariachi version of the F1 theme song played. And that's a weird reason, I know. But I also really want to travel to Mexico. I think the culture, the food, the color, the vibrancy of Mexico is just it would be so enchanting and so fun. And I've never been to South America, to Mexico, to any of that kind of regions. Putting my travel writer hat on, that would be a very cool experience for me, very cool culture to experience. Yeah, so that's my dream.
My dream won't be a surprise to anybody. It's Monza, 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 Monza. I need to be with my people. So that's the dream that I hope to make a reality sometime soon. I would also love to go to the Japanese Grand Prix. I really want to go to Singapore because that just looks like such fun. And I love Singapore as a destination. There are so many great destinations.
Also street races. There's something about a street race, and that's, I think, because you're right in the thick of the action while the race is happening, rather than having to go out to the track, you're there. So Singapore, Monaco, which you've been to.
I went to Monaco, and Daniel Ricciardo actually finished second the year that I went. And let me tell you how expensive the tickets were. This is 10 years ago, okay? 10 years ago at Monaco. We bought tickets last minute, 2 weeks before the race. It wasn't even a seat, actually, the grandstand. It was a plank of wood that had painted lines on it that said 55 and 56, and that's where we sat. It was opposite the marina, but Sunday-only tickets for two of us cost 10 years ago, 1,500 Australian dollars, which in today's terms would be about $35,000. No, okay, I'm exaggerating, but it was so expensive. And when I suggested to my husband, who is at the time was like a lukewarm Formula One fan, kind of following it like you initially, just kind of one eye on it. When I said to him, should we go to the Monte Carlo Grand Prix? What do you think? And he said, sure. I just booked tickets, paid for them, and then I didn't tell him how much they cost for about 2 years.
What you don't know won't hurt you, so that was probably the best.
Yeah, but I've done myself a massive disservice because whenever I say to him now, why don't we go to such and such a race? He's like, why? I've been to Monaco. Why would I want to go anywhere else? I've been to the best. And it was a pretty epic experience. I won't lie. It was completely different atmosphere to the Australian Grand Prix, which I've been to several times, and also the British Grand Prix, which I've got like awful memories of just traffic getting to the track. That was when I was working in F1, so a long time ago. But also when I was in that job, I don't think I've told you this story before, Mon, is that we had a media day. So the Orange Arrows team used to have a 2-seater Formula One car that they used for special events. And Johnny Herbert, who's now an F1 commentator, was the driver of the 2-seater F1 car. And the media day, we had the editor of Mobile magazine, which was a industry magazine for mobile phones and mobile networks, and Orange being the title sponsor, so that you can see the connection there. So she did a lap around Silverstone, or a couple of laps with Johnny Herbert driving, and she was so nervous before getting in the car. She was shaking. She was just really nervous. Anyway, she pulled into the pits after her laps with Johnny. She was white. She ran straight to the bathroom, shut the door, and she was unwell. And
that's the G-forces?
Yeah, that was the G-force. I think nerves as well, and adrenaline, and all of those things combined. And as PRs, we were like, oh my God, this is not good. If an editor is not enjoying this experience, which is costing a huge amount of money and so many logistics to put this on. Anyway, she comes out of the bathroom. She's composed herself a bit, still looking quite pale. And Johnny Herbert says to her, you know what the biggest mistake is that you made? And she said, what? And he said, you told me you were nervous before you got in the car. I just clocked my fastest lap. And I was like, oh my God, Johnny. Anyway, we made front cover of the next edition of the magazine. So it all worked out in the end. It was such a fun day. And that's actually the first time I heard an F1 car start up. And like you were saying about going to Tarmac West and hearing those rally cars, which are some of them are super loud as well.
Yeah.
Hearing them roar, but the first time I heard an F1 car start up, my palms got sweaty. It was just
knees weak, arms are heavy.
That was like total lifelong dedication right there.
I never in my life thought that I would hear a Formula One car or one of the rally cars and go, oh yeah, that's sexy. But it is. It really is.
So is.
let me caveat this by saying, if you drive past me in a souped up Holden with your windows down and whistle at me, that is not sexy. But the sound of a rally car or a Formula One car, which actually back when you were working in Formula One, they would have sounded more like the Formula 2, Formula 3 cars. Right?
They were super loud. They were the V10s. It was completely different. Even in Monaco 10 years ago at that Grand Prix, the Formula 2s were louder than the Formula 1s.
They still are. Now the Formula 2 and Formula 3 cars and the Porsche Carrera Cup that travels a lot with the Formula 1, they're the ones that are the loudest. The Formula 1 cars, they're fine. Like, don't put earplugs in if you're ever going to watch them. Like, the sound is amazing. Yeah. Formula 3, yes, put your earplugs in.
I don't wear earplugs for any of them, to be honest. Every week, we're going to be dropping episodes like Monique has said, and we're going to be talking about everything to do with Formula One, including what to eat during F1 races. So when Monique's not away travelling either for work as a travel writer or to a race, she treats her other half with an F1 themed meal.
I do. And you know what? I think this was one of the things that really helped me get into Formula One even more. And I can't take credit for this. This has come from another one of our Formula One loving friends, Louisa. So if you're listening, Louisa, thank you. Thank you so much for the idea. But basically, wherever the Formula One travels to that weekend, I cook a feast from that region. So obviously if it goes to America, you know, things like wings or burgers or whatever else Americans eat, barbecue. But then the funnest ones are when it's in places like Azerbaijan or, you know, Doha or something like that, because traditionally I don't really cook Middle Eastern food and I wouldn't really know what to cook from those regions. So the funnest thing for me is going, okay, what's a traditional dish from this region, and Googling and finding recipes. And I think there was one week I was talking to you actually about what in the world I was going to cook for, I can't remember what race it was. It might have been Azerbaijan actually. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to cook. And I ended up finding a recipe. You suggested like maybe there's like breakfast recipes and stuff that you can look at. And I ended up cooking the best breakfast eggs I have had in a very long time. And now that I'm thinking about it, I really need to get that recipe out again and make it. It was something that would not have been on my radar if it wasn't because there was a Formula One race there. So yeah. And I think you cooked that dish too, didn't you?
I cooked an almond chicken rice dish from Azerbaijan. I think that's what. And I also made these really beautiful stuffed dates with tahini and coated in chocolate, and they were sort of salty, sweet, nutty, gooey, caramelly from the fresh dates. So we will be exploring around the world through food as well. You can look forward to that, and any recipes that we cook will be posted on the website and shared on social media. And that's us for this week. See you next episode for all the action on, off, and around the track.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast listening app. You can also leave us any questions, comments, conversations that you have on our social media. We have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, Facebook, and TikTok. Just search for And Away We Go F1 Podcast and you'll find us there. We'll also leave all our links as well as our email address, which is andawaywegofn@gmail.com in our show notes.
Thanks, Mon, and thanks for having us in your ears. Until next week and until lights out.
It's lights out and away we go.
And Away We Go podcast is produced by Dianne Bortoletto and Monique Ceccato.
Let's do it.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.